Senator Polley.
Thank you, Acting Deputy President. I rise to speak on the Competition and Consumer Amendment Make Price Gouging Illegal Bill 2024. The Albanese Labor Government believes every Australian deserves a fair deal when going to the supermarket on their weekly shop. It's appalling how big corporations have been allowed to take advantage of everyday Australians by jacking up and manipulating prices in order to trick people into believing they're getting a better deal than they really are. I can remember being part of the National Price Watch organisation and going out on a monthly basis checking prices. And what I found at that time was how extraordinary that it depended on which suburb you lived in as to the two major chains, the differences in their stores. Always blaming coming to Tasmania is all about freight and transport. The reality is all of the groceries go into the one central point and then they're transported out. And to be frank with you, between Newstead and Mowbray would be no more than 4 kilometres. So the changes in those areas, one is more affluent, the other one is more working class. The working class supermarket was the most expensive. That was the reality in the 1990s, early 2000s. But what we've been doing since we've come into government is we've actually been listening to the Australian community, and we know that people are struggling right now, that everyday Australians are dreading the weekly trip to the supermarket. This is why the Albanese Labor Government is cracking down on these dodgy corporations that have been steadily raising their prices for years, but unlike the Liberals, who over their decade of incompetence and neglect when they were in government did absolutely nothing about it to prevent or force these changes to happen. But what we've seen from the contributions that have been made here this morning is the Liberal senator from WA, of course, put all of this at the foot of the Labor government, that it's all our fault. The prices are rising, cost of living is going up, and yet they were in government and the cost of living during that time was going up, and they're talking about wages and cost. Their policy was intentionally to keep Australian wages, low-income earners' wages lower. That was their policy. So what we have done since we've been in government is we are addressing the neglect by those on the other side because they did nothing to prevent the foreseeable outcomes of price rising, the flashing neo signs that were warning us about the rise in the cost of living. But they did nothing, as I said, which is why we had to clean up yet again another mess that they left behind after a decade of neglect. We know that the Greens political party are the experts that come into this chamber, grandstand on any issue that they believe will make good social media or they can get good media grabs. That's what they do. Because the Greens political MPs and senators are really like a group of children, throwing tantrums because they can't always get their own way. Now let's talk about the housing policy, the bleating through the media and in this chamber about not addressing social and affordable housing in this country, and yet this government has invested more in housing than any government in this last 100 years. But when you have the opportunity to vote for legislation to bring about change that's going to help house 40,000 Australian families, what do? They team up with the Liberals to prevent a vote on that very legislation. They didn't have the guts to vote it down, but they also have no foresight to support good legislation. So they need to be called out. But I digress. I really should stick to the issue about groceries and what's happening and affecting everyday Australians, but I can't help it. They make my blood boil, really, they do, because they're such hypocrites. I want to really, though, talk about the improvements that this government, that the Labor government, has made to help Australians deal with the cost of living. I don't want to be someone who comes in this chamber and whinges about things without being part of a government that actually makes changes and addresses the concerns that are affecting my fellow Australians. Now, like I said before, the Liberals want to blame Labor for everything, including interest rates, including low wages, inflations. But it's almost like they think we designed this. We didn't. But what we're doing is taking good policies, bringing good legislation into this place to address those very issues. Now, today we're tackling issues at the forefront of this deception of shrinkflation. Shrinkflation is a tactic these organisations use to deceive customers slowly over time to attempt to go undetected, where they slowly increase the price of a product and blaming the price rise on inflation while simultaneously decreasing the size and the amount of the usable product. These use of manipulations and blatant deception is unacceptable in our country, and we as a government are not going to stand by and allow that to happen any longer. We're a government of action. Our government is dedicated to ensuring that every Australian knows that what they're paying for at the checkout is a fair price and that there is no deception attached to that. Now, our government plans to implement laws that will both force these organisations to display clearer unit pricing and fine companies severely for not abiding by these laws. The way we go about this is through amending the unit price code to ensure that corporations are providing the information needed for Australians to make an informed decision and to get the best deals possible. I don't know whether you've found this, but when I go grocery shopping and they have a little tag that says that this is a deal or it's reduced, I always check underneath to make sure, and it is amazing how many times you will find that when there's a great deal, the price is the same. It's just a con to get you to actually believe that they're doing something to help you. So the issue is buyers beware. But what we're doing is we're actually taking, as I said, the measures we will be putting into legislation. We will be strengthening this code to protect Australians from that greedy, currently infecting supermarket view that they have at the world, that as a duopoly they have the right as major organisations to do what they want. Well, we're going to take them head on. We're currently focusing on improving the visibility and readiness of price tags to allow for shoppers an easy time comparing prices. For much the same reason, we're looking at ways to address the major inconsistency when it comes to the units of measurement used across various supermarkets. Both of these underhanded tactics are meant to make it more difficult for consumers to determine the best deals. Now, we all know everyone is so busy, people want to go into the supermarket, grab their prices and know with confidence that they're not being ripped off when they get to the checkout. The Albanese Labor Government is already investing $30 million into the ACCC to further crack down on supermarkets and their deceptive practices. So we're investing with the ACCC, who will also take action and monitor what is happening in the supermarkets. And this money is a great investment and will go a long way in supporting Australians to take the pressure off the cost of living and allow for rates to decrease at a much faster rate in terms of pricing. There's got to be justification, real justification for increasing the prices at the supermarket. Another thing this government is doing is following the recommendations we've received from Dr Craig Emerson in his review. The review has allowed the Albanese Labor Government to commence accurate and meaningful consultation for a new mandatory food and grocery code. We have further enforced competition and consumer laws by banning unfair contract terms as well as increasing the penalties for breaching the said laws. And our government is working hard on delivering substantial progress on the most significant merger reforms in this country for over 5 decades. Due to our efficient communications with state and the fact that we are willing to work with state governments and our ability to make things happen. We're working with them across this issue, as we are with so many others, to revitalise the national competition policy, which includes both planning and zoning for supermarkets. On top of all of these amazing works and our plans to address these deceptive practices from these major corporations, we have also supported Choice to release their second prize monitoring report, and this report will once again give the Australian people extremely accurate data on where they can get the best deals in order to put even more pressure on the supermarkets. Now, the Albanese Labor Government has chosen to fund this because we know Australians are doing it tough and we care. We know how hard it is in managing your own personal budget. So these corporations have been warned. We are prepared to work with them. We will do this diligently, and we will do it, though, with Australian consumers at the forefront of our concerns. We will work with them to ensure that Australians know that any increase in their grocery prices will be based on legitimate reasons for doing that, and that we will end these deceptive practices of raising the price while reducing the size of the product. Now, groceries are a massive factor in the cost of living in Australia right now. And by working to address these issues, our government will help every single hard-working Aussie. Labor has a long legacy of being for the people, and like the previous government, we are acting in the areas that we believe count most and have the greatest impact on Australian consumers. We have given tax cuts, we've given an energy bill relief, we've supplied cheaper medicines. And just a reminder to anyone that's listening to this, those three measures alone, the tax cuts that we gave, were given to all Australian workers. There were workers under the Liberals' proposal where low-income workers were not going to get a tax cut at all. So we've done that. They voted against our increase to the tax cuts. They voted against cheaper medicines. Every single piece of legislation that we've brought in, including energy relief, assistance to Australians and small businesses, that previous government did nothing when they were in government. They had 22 failed policies, and now we know they've gone for the mushroom cloud effect by Mr Dutton. So the big difference is we are addressing the issues. We have listened to Australian people. We know their genuine concerns about what's happening out in supermarkets. And like Senator Tyrrell and Senator Urquhart, coming from Tasmania, we don't have the same opportunities for Aldi because Aldi has chosen not to come to Tasmania. Why? Because they themselves won't obviously make enough money. That's the only reason they won't come, because Tasmanians are calling out for that competition. So my call for Aldi today is come down and you will be surprised how well supported you are. But the difference in this legislation, even though the intent may very well be a good one, which is unusual for the Greens, that it needs so much work. And coming into this chamber, introducing legislation should not be based on a children's tantrum of let's get some publicity, let's try and con the Australian people before a federal election, because that's what they're doing. Because on one hand, they're saying they're talking for Australian consumers. On the other hand, the Greens in Tasmania are rallying outside retailers who sell legitimately clean salmon from Tasmania. That's what these people are doing. They are such hypocrites. They are hypocrites. They want to close down retailers who sell Tasmanian salmon, which is the best salmon in the world. We export internationally. We have clean, green environment for which they are grown. But what do they do again? It's all about politics, not about achieving. Order. It's about politics.
Thank you.